Hey Year 12s! Today we're discussing Summer of the 17th Doll by Ray Lawler in relation to identity and belonging. If this isn't one of your texts, or you haven't watched that video on identity and belonging yet, stop, go watch that first, and then come back. There are 4 possible texts you could study for identity and belonging, of which this is one. Make sure you're not watching videos for texts you're not studying. Alright, on to Summer of the 17th Doll, which I'll just call 17th Doll, or The Play from now on. Lawler's play exposes many of the central concepts of identity and belonging through the lens of Melbourne in the 1950s. In particular, the play relates to the complexities and confusion surrounding how we know who we are, and the ways in which we forge a sense of belonging with others. This play is often said to be authentically Australian, and it is worth considering the ways in which it represents and reflects on aspects of our national culture and identity. If you're hoping to use Lawler as inspiration for creative writing, or you want to analyse his style in a bit more depth, consider the following. Detailed stage directions. Lawler consistently paints detailed pictures of the scenes in the play, even providing information that can be informative for the actor playing a character, but can't possibly be physically displayed. Character moods and motivations are often revealed in stage directions. Informal language, in particular Australian vernacular, which ties the play to its distinctly Australian style and the characters to their roots as blue-collar Australians. Examples of this are phrases like "up there, Kazali," "flat, stony, stinkin' broke." Reoccurring metaphorical symbols. Examples of this include the Kewpie dolls and trinkets from Queensland, coral, butterflies and so forth, that turn to dust in Olive's hands as she cleans up after the fight with Rue. Setting. Many aspects of this play are distinctly Australian and distinctly 1950s. Think about the way the characters speak and dress, as well as the types of things they do for entertainment and employment. All of this contributes to the play being instantly recognizable as set in a particular time and place. More importantly though, let's look at the big ideas of identity and belonging which emerge from 17th Doll. First, let's discuss the ways in which this play represents belonging as being important. The idea that a need to belong is an inherent human desire is explored throughout the play. Olive and Bubba are both protective of the dynamics and external perception of their group, each drawing a sense of identity from their membership to it. Bubba is constantly justifying her stories of the good old days with statements like, "You wouldn't understand," when outsiders don't grasp the symbolic significance of the group's traditions, such as the annual doll delivery from Rue to Olive. Furthermore, Bubba has grown up in the group and retains much of her younger self's identity, rather than risk upsetting the balance that has developed for the group, particularly now that Nancy is gone, such as not requesting the others begin calling her by her real name. Significantly, this real name is not revealed to the audience until Johnny Dowd asks where the nickname of Bubba has come from, demonstrating her total immersion in her life within the group. Having coveted Olive and Nancy's life with the cane cutters from a young age, Bubba goes so far as to desire that life for herself. Lawler positions Johnny Dowd as Bubba's own ticket to a continuation of the tradition she's grown up with. In this way, the course of Bubba's life is depicted as shaped by her membership to this group and her idolization of its members. Olive is affected by external perceptions of the group in a similar way to Bubba. She emphatically defends her stories from the past when Pearl questions if things were really all they were cracked up to be. She is shattered that Pearl isn't able to see the group the same way that she's described it as being for the past 17 years, because so much of her life is tied up in her connection to Barney, Rue, and Nancy. This sense of total devotion to the group is mirrored in the reactions of the present characters to Nancy's departure. They are all shocked that she has truly gotten married and left Barney and the group behind her. In a different way, the importance of belonging is depicted through Rue's falling out with the other cane cutters and Barney's determination to mend those wounds. Not only are Rue and Barney financially reliant on the group dynamics, they've lived with Nancy and Olive in Emma's house for the past 17 years and they work in a group of cane cutters for 7 months of the year. But the importance of a positive working relationship with the boys is shown in Barney's attempts to reconnect Rue with Johnny Dowd. The practical and emotional significance of Rue being out of the group of cane cutters is demonstrated in his emotional confession to Olive that he's broke, and Barley's earlier revelation that Rue almost refused to return to the house this summer. This leads us on to thinking about the ways in which a sense of belonging influences identity. 17th Doll explores the ways in which a strong connection with others can influence our sense of self. In some ways, all of the characters rely on the group for affirmation of their identities, but Olive and Bubba are particularly affected by this link. Much of Olive's identity is tied to the uniqueness of her relationship with Rue. She looks at her married friends with astonishment and some disdain. She is desperate to depict Rue and Barney as different from other ordinary men in her descriptions of them to Pearl, and establish that their return for 5 months of the year is well worth the disappearance for the other 7. Olive reveals her vulnerability by displaying her fear that the group is breaking up with the departure of Nancy, and revelation that Rue may be done as a cane cutter. This is why she tries to replace Nancy with Pearl, and reacts so strongly to Rue's proposal of marriage. For Olive, the end of the group as she knows it would not only be the end of her relationship with its members, but an attack on her sense of self. Bubba's idolization of the group dynamics, and Nancy and Olive's relationships with Barney and Rue, results in her desire to mimic their lifestyle in her own life. Growing up next door to the Leach House's annual summer tradition has shaped not only her sense of belonging, but her desires and expectations for her own life. Next, let's consider how the play portrays the way in which identity is formed. In any text, there are thousands of indications as to how a character's identity is formed, but there are a few points worth noting that are specific to 17th Doll. Olive views her identity as altogether tied up in the health of the group and her status as an unmarried woman. She fears being trapped like her married female friends and of changing group dynamics after Nancy's departure. Her breakdown at the conclusion of the play stems from her realization that Rue has altogether misunderstood her identity. His offer to marry her reveals his thinking that she has wanted marriage all of these years, and he has kept it from her. In contrast, Olive considers her lack of desire to get married as part of her identity, because it positions her as unique from other women around her, including Nancy and Pearl. For the men, their identity is grounded in not only their job, but the caricatures of themselves that others seem to accept as fact. Barney is a womanizer and Rue is a champion cane cutter. Barney is deeply shaken by Nancy's marriage, not only because of his feelings for her, but because after many years of waiting for him, his charms appear to be not enough anymore. Even more so, Rue's identity is challenged by the events of the months preceding the opening scene of the play. He is ashamed to confess to Olive that he is broke, flat, stony, stinking broke, and goes along with Barney's story about his bad back so as to live in the illusion longer that he is still in the best of the cane cutters. Both men are threatened by their fading youth, a fear that is intensified by the emergence of Johnny Dowd. In particular, Rue struggles to come to terms with aging and the changes that come with this, because he identifies himself as a gang leader and Barney's right-hand man, two things that have ended in the months preceding the play. This is exemplified in the scene where Barney brings Johnny Dowd to the house to make amends with Rue. He's ashamed to be seen with paint on his clothes, working a job other than as a cane cutter, just like the men with city jobs that so many of the characters seem to resent. This leads on to our next major theme from the play, the ways that identity can change over time. Lawler reflects on aging and the draw of fading youth throughout the play, leading naturally on to an exploration of how identity can change as we grow older and have new experiences. For 17 years, Rue has had a very clear idea of who he is, but recent events with Johnny Dowd have shaken his resolve and he begins to feel his age. By the final scene of the play, he's come to terms with aging and begun to develop a new idea of where he might fit in, accepting that he could keep his job in the paint factory and settle down with Olive. Her rejection of this new resolve disrupts the trajectory of Rue's developing new identity, and he reverts back to the sense of self that he's held on for the past 17 years, that of cane cutter and Barney's right-hand man. Nancy too changes over the course of the play. Once she decides to stay in the house, her stage directions note that she is visibly happier and more relaxed. But Barney's request for her daughter to join him and Johnny Dowd at the races leads to their falling out and her subsequent return to her former stiff self. In this way, the conclusion of the play is devastating, as it sees characters revert back to their identities as they originally held them, rather than develop further to find a new sort of peace with their sense of self. This is just a bit of a taste of identity and belonging within the summer of the 17th Doll, but hopefully it gives you some good talking points for your next context piece. Make sure to check out the video on identity and belonging and how to write different context pieces. Thanks for listening, and happy writing.
Click here to go to the Engage Wiki if you find yourself getting stuck, or click here to see the next tape.